Hi, this is Mike Bjorkman. Thanks so much for joining us here with Minute with Mike on SCV TV. I'm excited today to introduce somebody very special to me. This is Anita Lombardi from Federal Escrow.
Hi, Mike, and hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. We go back so long. I've known Anita for at least 20 years. She's been in the business for, gosh, almost 37 years. When we met was a pretty interesting time in the early 90s, and we went through a lot of escrows together, and then she decided to open up Federal Escrow in 1998. Now, I know many of you weren't in the real estate market back then, so the point I'm trying to prove is we are sitting here with some serious, what's the word I'm looking for? Experience. I love it. All right. So I wrote down some really important questions for you.
Okay.
And obviously today we want to talk about escrow.
Okay.
What I want to start out with is what buyers and sellers should know about escrow. One of the things that people come to me and say, Mike, why do we have escrow? What do we need escrow for? What the heck is escrow? Can you give us a little bit of rundown on what it is and some important little tips that we make sure we want to point out?
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of first-time home buyers out there that have never had an escrow company before or bought a home before, so they don't understand. And there's a lot of people that come from back east, and there's a lot of states that don't have escrow.
They have attorneys.
They have attorneys. So we in California get to do what attorneys do in other states, such as handling the loan documents, handling the escrow instructions. So as a realtor, when you write their purchase contract, you bring that to us along with their money, and we put that into escrow, and then we draw our escrow instructions, and we order all of the necessary documentation for us to be able to close the escrow, such as the title and so on and so forth.
Would it be safe to call you the transaction facilitator, where if I write a contract, it's your job to make sure that contract's being followed?
Absolutely. We're an instruction taker. Okay. So that's exactly what we do. If we're given an instruction in writing, everything is done in writing. There's no handshakes or smiles or
that never works out.
Yeah. So anything that's in writing, we follow our instructions to the T according to the contract and our escrow instructions to get, and the lender's instructions to get an escrow closed.
Right. During an escrow transaction, I've been told about 50 to 60 people will touch your file at any given time. How many people through the escrow process in your office will it touch?
Probably, as far as the escrow itself, there's probably four.
Four different people.
Four different people. There's an escrow officer and her assistant. We do have one that actually will open the files and order demands, and so it's kind of a backup assistant also.
Right. So escrow is something that's pretty darn complicated, and a lot of people just don't quite get a grasp for that. One of my biggest challenges when I'm working with a home seller, and it's kind of funny, a lot of in my luxury field, these people don't want to get this paperwork back to you and don't realize how important it is. Can you stress to my clients and our other agents watching this how important this is?
You know, we talk to our agents a lot about it because they are instrumental, obviously, in letting their clients know that it's really important. When we send out a whole package from escrow, it's got a lot of things in it. It's got the statement of information, which is really a crucial part as far as the seller is concerned, so that we can send that to the title company and make sure the property and their names are free and clear of any liens.
Right.
We also need things ahead of time, like to order demands, to order homeowner association statements and loan documents from the homeowners association. 'Cause sometimes on the purchase contract, it doesn't even show that there's a homeowners association.
Right.
So we're not going to know unless the seller tells us.
Right.
And then we've got to find out, you know, who that is. And sometimes there's more than one on any piece of property.
So what she's trying to say, folks, is she's babysitting all of us during this transaction and, you know, quite honestly, saving us from a lot of problems. When I first got into real estate, you remember that?
Yes.
Escrows used to be 60 days on average.
Yes.
And there was a good reason for that, because we needed mail, snail mail, that's what we call it nowadays.
Correct.
We drive really far for everything, and now we have so much technology. But the fact of the matter is we still need to have at least 30 days for the loans, but more importantly, we have so many things that escrow has to order and get accomplished for us that it's tremendous amount of responsibility, and it just never seems to end. And I don't really know what we could ever do without an escrow officer. So I like to stress out.
Thank you.
I like to stress that point because there's so much stuff that gets done. You know, and the other question I wrote down that we have a lot of challenges with, questions are always coming up about preliminary change of ownership. Can you explain kind of how it works from when I'm selling my house to you, what that might look like in escrow?
So if you were selling your house to me, you're going to sign the grant deed, and I, as the buyer, am going to execute the preliminary change of ownership. And I sign that, and there's questions on it regarding the change in the property and so on and so forth, and that actually goes to the county recorder with the grant deed. And that tells the assessor's office that property has changed hands.
Right.
So once that is done, the assessor's office will then randomly send out a change of ownership. So a lot of times, even though we've done the preliminary change of ownership, they'll still send out the change of ownership to you. So you'll get it in the mail and you'll go, what the heck? I thought escrow did this.
Right.
And they call us, but if you read far enough on there, it shows that it is an actual change of ownership. And you just have to fill it out and send it back in, and it's something that's perfectly normal. But they do apparently threaten that there's fees and there's this and there's that and all that stuff, but that's only if you don't fill it out and send it back in. So
exactly.
All of that is done at the close of escrow.
Again, something so important. Tax assessments. Taxes are always such a huge problem. Should I pay my taxes before I close escrow? Should I not? Are they prorated? Talk to us about tax assessments as well.
Any taxes that are owed at the time of the close of escrow, it depends on the time of year that you close escrow. If you're closing escrow right around tax time like we just passed up, and you're in escrow, please call your escrow company and say, what do I do? Unless you have an impound account with your existing lender, then there's really nothing you can do, and we'll follow up with the demand. But if you want to pay your taxes, the best thing to do is to pay it through escrow with a cashier's check, and we get that to the title company, and they actually forward it on. So the title company has to tell everybody that it is clear, and that's the only way that they'll show it as paid. So if you mail it off, they're going to hold that money at the close. And then once the property is closed, they'll reassess the property. They're not going to forget about you. It might take a while.
So that might, not that this is part of the video, but a supplemental tax bill might pop up.
A supplemental will pop up, and then that's your responsibility to pay. Even if you have an impound account, just my opinion, you should go ahead and pay that. The other option you have is to send it to your lender, but then they're going to bump up your monthly payment for that impound to cover that supplemental bill. And it's not necessarily going to go back down real quick. It's usually not real huge, so I would just pay it if it were me, but you're going to get one eventually.
No, absolutely. You know, folks, you can obviously see escrow is not the easiest thing in the world. It's probably one of the most complicated parts of the escrow process. That's why it's so important that you choose your escrow officer, correctly. Which actually, a lot of times, the agent might have influence of who the escrow officer is. We've built relationships for years and years and years, and we want to keep our clients happy. We want to keep them non-confused as much as possible. And the level of customer service has everything to do with how smoothly the transaction closes and how what the effect is on the buyer or seller, because it's a stressful period. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree, and communication is key. And we try to stress at Federal Escrow, to keep communication open with the agents and with the buyer and seller. There's not anybody that won't take a buyer and seller call and say, talk to your agent. So it's very important.
Thank God the REO market's over, because what was happening is the banks were choosing our escrow companies, and we were having no control.
Right.
They wouldn't call back. The buyers and sellers are just going absolutely berserk trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
They'd be hours and hours away. We'd have no support. So, that's one of the things I'm so thankful for, to be able to create relationships with a company like yours, so we can have our buyers and sellers just stop by and say, hey, can you explain this to me? And and that's one of the reasons I use your company, and always will, because no matter which escrow officer I'm using, things are smooth. And I have a certain amount of control. If my buyer needs a little more hand-holding, I can pick up the phone and comfortably ask, say, Anita, this particular Mr. and Mrs. Smith would like this explained. Will you meet with them? And it's always a yes with a smile. And that's one of the reasons we like to use this. The last thing I wrote down, what in the world is the California Good Funds Law? Everybody seems to be talking about that, and they always go, what is that? Let's have a professional explain that.
Okay. California Good Funds Law means that we must have funds that are usable in our escrow before we can close escrow. Used to be, bring in a check, you wait 7 to 10 days to close your escrow. Then they kind of went to cashier's checks or okay. With technology these days, we can't really even count on that. The banks tell us, even though with technology it seems to hit the banks really quickly, they tell us 3 days for a cashier's check. And you know, we'd like to be able to receive it today and close tomorrow. So what we really stress is that it's very important to just wire that money directly to us. And we give our wiring instructions out there so that they can wire the funds in. That's immediate good funds in the state of California. A lot of times a cashier's check will be issued, even though it's issued here, it's an out-of-state check.
Right, exactly.
So that's not good funds, and we can't close escrow, and it could hold it up. So.
Right. We don't want that.
We don't want that.
Do you guys all understand that? Yeah? Escrow, again, it gets complicated. One thing we know is so many agents watch my show, and so many of my clients, past clients and future clients do. If they have questions for you about escrow, are they able to get a hold of you, and how would they do so?
Yes, they can. They can call me at my office at 661-222-3132. And I'm almost always there. And if I'm not, we do have managers in both of our offices, and they can certainly answer any questions.
Right. So again, one of the reasons I use Federal Escrow is the good communication, the customer service, and one of the things that our clients sometimes point out is our pricing, which I want to point out is always competitive. They are constantly scouring the inventory of escrow companies and making sure they're always competitive, so I can deliver the best value to my clients. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here on the show today. I really appreciate it. Again, Anita Lombardi from Federal Escrow. My name is Mike Bjorkman. For the rentals, scvleasing.com. For the sales, SantaClaritaRealEstate.com. Thanks again for watching SCV TV and our segment, Minute with Mike. Have a great day.
Bye.